Well, hi. Greetings, everyone. A happy Mother's Day. You know, doing this kind of stuff really makes me happy. I realize the work I put in, and I realize that I can read a lot, I can listen a lot, but I can honestly tell you, I've never been more in touch with what's going on, not just in the markets, but the world. And I guess I got to thank you for that. Without further ado, what happened last week? Not much. Uneventful. Consumers aren't happy. Michigan survey, they're downbeat. That was the lowest sentiment index in 6 months. Not only that, they see higher inflation, the highest inflation predicted in 12 years. It's not good. CPI was lower, but let's just do the math. Last year at this time, CPI was increasing sometimes at 1% a month. That's dropped. So if you drop last year's month and add on this year's month, it's going to be a lower number. That's good, but all things considered, a 5% inflation rate isn't good. And then, yeah, the Bank of England did what they wanted to do. They raised their interest rates a quarter point, but this time it wasn't unanimous. 7 voted to raise, 2 said, that's so fast. I'd say that takes us to next week, but it doesn't. Like this coming week, you basically had another Fed speak week. Yeah. Philip Jefferson went out and said, no, yeah, we want full employment. We want the world to be a happy place, but we want stable prices and we want to bring inflation down. And I'll quote, it's the most insidious of social diseases. Interesting words. St. Louis Fed President Bullard guarded optimism. Yep, we're on the right track. We're doing the right things. This monetary policy, we could raise rates more at the low end. I think we got it. But that's not guaranteed. I can see higher rates. Okay, 2 for 2. And then, truly one of my favorites, Austin Goolsbee. We're looking for balance. Got to slow inflation. Don't want to see a major recession. We're making progress, but inflation is still too high. So again, lots of words, lots of hopes, lots of promises, but they're not there yet, and they know it. Next week, just about as uneventful as this week. Retail sales get announced on Tuesday. Well, just remember, retail sales are not adjusted for inflation, so they should be decent. You got all the bellwether retailers, Walmart's, Home Depots, Lowe's, everybody reporting this week. So it'd be interesting to take a look at what's going on there. Jobless numbers, they're coming out on Thursday. Whoopee. What are they really going to tell us? Unless you see the jobless rate go up huge amounts, it's essentially the old story of status quo. Nothing's really changed. Be a little bit out of Europe with few this week, and yeah, China's going to report some numbers, but all things considered, as they would say, it's all quiet on the Western Front. General markets, however, the stock rally, if you can call it that, is kind of leaving the small caps in the dust. That was our signal years ago, in October 21, when the Russell was the first to say, hey, we see trouble on the horizon. It's happening again. So far this year, the Russell's down 1%, while the S&P is up 7%. Sure, I'd buy dividend stocks too in this environment, but that's a pretty big gap. Small caps are out of quote-unquote favor. When that happens, that usually signals a recession's coming. Of course, then again, we do have the banking crisis still, and small caps have a tendency to underperform in that environment because guess where the banking stocks are located, what index they're in. Small cap ratio, the S&P 600 ratio, however, fell to 13. All things considered, it's average around 18, 19. It fell to 13, and you know what that says to me? It says start looking. I like to buy when that number's low. U.S. equity funds, yeah, they lost what? 5.7 billion last week. The 7th week in a row of declines. U.S. debt ceilings here. Disappointing earnings are forecast. I got a feeling that this market might head south. Yay, hallelujah. Be a good time to look for stocks. I got one. Every now and then I watch them, and there's times to buy. I've promised an article on the biotechs, and I've pretty much completed my research, but I'm not ready to buy. You'll see a little bit more this week. I'm getting closer, but it's just not at a point where the pricing in some of those stocks are attractive to me. But there is one in the agriculture industry, a fertilizer stock, Canadian-based, Nutrien, symbol NTR. I talk about it more in the Sunday write-up, but just a couple reasons why I look to buy companies like this. One, they missed badly. I think it was $1.11 versus $1.50, 51 or something, and revenues came in light, 6.11 billion versus 6.39. I don't care. I'd look for things like that. Give me a good miss. Give me a time when the investment world, the gurus say, oh, got to stay away from this. Always wondered why they stayed away from a stock when a good stock went down. In my book, when a good stock went down, that represented value. It's a buying point. Again, might be early to call a bottom. I do like the company. I do like the management. I do like the fact that they're in a product line that, in recessions, people still got to eat. Farmers still buy fertilizer. So they missed. All right, they'll be back. Give it a look. It's in the write-up. A little more time is spent then. This week I wanted to talk more about history. I always preach, history is something that I have a good handle on. Why? Because I lived it. I've also seen mistakes made over and over again. And guess what, folks? We're doing it again. It's called the debt crisis. It's not one party or another. It's both. Debt ceiling. Oh, my God. We got to raise it or we're going to default. Since 76, there's been 22 federal government shutdowns. But there's never been a default. The debt ceiling, since 1917, now standing at $31.4 trillion, has been raised 78 times. But there's 3 times when these kind of fights that are going on now have taken place. Some of you might remember. Some of you might remember the names. But if you don't, take a look. 1995. Well, that was the period that followed Clinton essentially getting squashed. Lost 8 seats in the Senate, 54 seats in the House. Gingrich puts out the contract with America. Well, Clinton vetoed it. Government shut down for 5 days. Clinton threatened, you don't do this, we're not going to increase the debt limit. Well, Clinton responded with a second veto. You know what? 20 days later, after 20 more days, 21 days of a government shutdown, Republicans caved. Yeah, that happens. They didn't control both houses, or the Senate and the House. And 1985 ABC poll came out and said, hey, Republicans, most of us think you're at fault. They had egg on their face. Same thing might be happening again. In 2001, kind of a little bit more got done. Obama had just lost 7 Senate seats and 63 in the House, and they wanted deficit reduction. They wanted something to lower what we're spending, and then they considered raising the debt ceiling. Well, it came time to cutoff date, and we're going to knock away the ability for the United States to pay its bills it rightfully owed. This time, however, it was met by a little market chaos. The S&P fell 17%. S&P, the rating agency, dropped the United States from AAA. Result, you're going to have higher interest rates on your debt. With 2 days left before the ultimate cancellation of the U.S. paying their bills and going into default, they passed the Budget Control Act. Yeah, we're supposed to reduce spending over 10 years by $917 billion. I doubt it did. 2013 again. We're getting ready to hit a debt ceiling in January. So they said, we'll take some extraordinary measures. We'll stop paying into retirement funds of federal workers. We're going to borrow money from trust funds, and they raided the Social Security Fund. We're about $5.7 billion. We're going to use extraordinary measures. They used them from January to October. Then all of a sudden, they couldn't pay their bills anymore. So naturally, they shut down the government for 16 days. The real target, the Obama Affordable Care Act. Again, Republican support eroded, GOP caved. We're back to the same old thing. Nothing really got done. Two parties couldn't tango. Or maybe they tangoed too much. Well, we're here again. I'll let you take a look pretty much what's written, but once again, we're in the same place as we were mostly in 95 and 2013, and 2011. But we're here again. We're kicking the can down the road. Why? It's not going to be a good outcome. It's something that if I was looking at it, I realized it's going to cause a lot of distress in the credit markets. Again, I speak about it. It's really pretty well written. And I'm kind of a person. I like to be able to talk over what I've spoken of, but I've made my point. Please, take the time to read what I wrote. It's a long one, but there's very little in it that you're not going to learn from. One thing I've learned from, and it's something that I've actually written about, it's not what they say, it's what they don't say. And Powell, if you splice up his words, he hinted that we're not done. We're not done raising rates. He actually stated that additional policy firming may be appropriate. Yeah, that's a pretty bearish signal for risky assets, especially with a potential government debt default on its way. Then there's the banking crisis. We got that under control. If we have that under control, why are we constantly seeing more and more banks say, we got trouble, whatever? I think what Powell is really telling us is the Fed, they understand the chaos that's going on in financial markets. They're aware there's trouble in banking city. Inflation's not defeated. There's an uncertainty in the marketplace with no obvious solutions. Yeah, he can always step back and flood the banking system, but the victim of that's going to be inflation. You don't want that. Or we can just, raise the debt ceiling. Some people think that'll solve it. It'll kill it. When are we going to learn we've got to control our spending? Yeah, they're going to reach an agreement, undoubtedly, hopefully by the end of May, maybe longer. Yellen says, we run out of money in June 1st. Most others are saying, we can wait until July. We're going to have revenue in the middle of June from quarterly receipts. It's not that bad. But what is bad is if and when it happens, liquidity is done. They're going to take all the money, going to be borrowed by the Fed, and they're going to leave nothing else for normal corporations and businesses to borrow. So, in summary, we got a crisis. High inflation, commercial real estate's tanking. We keep increasing our budget. We put more and more measures, more and more problems onto the financial markets. That 2-year, 10-year bond and the inversion between them that typically signals a market collapse. And that's exactly what I'm predicting.